The chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the distress signal played for the third time. Static crackled through the speakers, punctuated by screams and the thunder of explosions. A weak voice spoke in the common tongue, desperate and breaking. "This is Velis Prime. We are under attack. The Crothian swarm has breached our orbital defenses. Millions are dead. Our cities are burning. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. We need." The transmission cut to static. Then nothing. Ambassador Hyam Lee watched the faces around the circular council table. He saw fear there. He saw calculation. He saw many things, but he did not see the will to act. Hyam had served Earth in this chamber for 12 years, and he knew what was coming next. Councillor Vex, a tall being with blue crystalline skin, spoke first. "This is unfortunate. The Velans were peaceful contributors to our community. However, engaging the Crothian swarm would be suicide for our defense forces." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Another councillor, this one from the Talran Collective, raised a tentacle. "The Crothians have already taken 17 systems. They have war spheres, planet killers, and an armada that numbers in the thousands. What can we possibly do?" Hyan stood slowly. His human frame was smaller than most beings present, but his voice carried weight. "We can answer their call for help. We can mobilize our forces and your forces?" Councillor Vex interrupted, and there was something ugly in his tone. "You mean the Deathworlders? You mean the species that comes from a world of poison air, crushing gravity, and predators at every turn? The species that frightens even our warriors?" The chamber erupted in argument. Some councillors defended humanity. Most did not. Hyan had heard it all before. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planets ever discovered to harbor intelligent life. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most galactic species within hours. High gravity had made them strong. Thin oxygen had made their blood efficient. Constant danger had made them aggressive, quick, and terrifyingly hard to kill. The galaxy feared them. Hyan waited for the noise to die down, then spoke quietly. "We are what our world made us. But the Velans are dying right now while we debate. I move that we send a relief force immediately." The vote was called. 47 species voted against action. 3 voted in favor. Humanity stood alone, as always. After the session ended, Hyam returned to his private quarters. His hand shook as he encrypted a message on his personal communicator. The device was old, built with human technology that the Council's surveillance could not easily penetrate. He typed quickly, "Commander Ji-Won Kim, authorization code, Nightfall 77. The Council has abandoned the Velans. Velis Prime is 3 sectors from our border. If the Crothians take it, they will be at our doorstep next. We need the Shadow Armada. We need you." He sent the message into the dark, toward a region of space that officially contained nothing but debris and dead stars. Then Haynes sat down and waited, wondering if he had just started a war or prevented one. 12 sectors away, in the absolute darkness between stars, something stirred. The bridge of the command station Fallen Star had been quiet for years. Its crew rotated through their duties with practiced efficiency, monitoring sensor arrays that watched the void for threats that never came. They were the forgotten ones, volunteers who had given up normal lives to serve in humanity's secret defense fleet. Commander Ji-Won Kim stood in the center of the bridge, studying star charts that glowed in the dim light. She was 43 years old, with short dark hair and scars on her hands from the border wars. Those conflicts had been kept secret from the galaxy. Small skirmishes with pirates and raiders that humanity had handled quietly. Ji-Won had lost friends in those fights. She had learned that the galaxy was not kind to the weak. Her communication officer looked up suddenly. "Commander, we have a priority transmission." Authorization code Nightfall 77. Jiwan's heart rate increased. That code had not been used in 30 years. It meant humanity was in danger. It meant the Shadow Armada was needed. She read Hyon's message twice, then activated the fleet-wide channel. This is Commander Jiwan Kim to all Shadow Armada vessels. Full mobilization protocol. This is not a drill. Prepare for combat operations. Across 12 sectors of dead space, 847 warships received the signal. Reactor cores that had idled for decades roared to full power. Weapon systems ran diagnostics. Crews scrambled to battle stations they had trained for, but never expected to use. Captain Minho Park commanded the dreadnought Eternal Horizon, one of the largest ships in the fleet. He was young for a captain, only 31, but he had scored perfectly on every tactical simulation the Academy offered. When the mobilization order arrived, he felt a mix of excitement and terror. "All hands to stations," he announced calmly. "Engineering, I want full power in 10 minutes. Weapons, start charging the main railguns. Navigation, plot a course to the rendezvous point." His crew moved with sharp efficiency. They had waited years for this moment, on the medical frigate Mercy's Grace. Dr. Borishin checked her supplies of surgical equipment and emergency medications. She was a civilian volunteer, a xenobiologist who had insisted on joining the fleet to help any species that needed aid. Her colleagues had called her crazy, but Bora believed that humanity's strength should be used to protect, not just destroy. Lieutenant Dan Wang sat in the navigation center of the carrier Horizon's Edge, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. She was calculating slipstream routes, the faster-than-light pathways that allowed ships to cross vast distances. Dan had a gift for it, an intuition that let her see patterns others missed. She pulled up the coordinates for Velis Prime and began plotting an impossible route. At the rendezvous point, the fleet gathered. 847 warships arranged themselves in formation, their hulls scarred from training exercises and old battles. They ranged from small stealth corvettes to massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking planets. Every ship bore the same marking, a blue sphere with white clouds, Earth surrounded by stars. Admiral Suji Choi arrived last, her flagship Ghost of Titan sliding into position at the formation's heart. Suji was a legend, a woman who had fought raiders, survived impossible odds, and built this fleet from nothing. She had lost her husband and 2 children to alien pirates 40 years ago. She had never forgotten. She had never forgiven. Suji activated fleet-wide communications. Her face appeared on every screen, every display, in every ready room across the Armada. She looked tired but determined. "For 50 years, they have called us monsters," she said quietly. "They fear us because we come from a world that tried to kill us every day. They see our strength and call it savage. They see our will to survive and call it aggression." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, we show them what monsters do when the innocent cry for help. We show them that Deathworlders do not hide when others suffer. We show them that humanity answers the call." Across the fleet, tens of thousands of voices responded as one. "We answer the call. Set course for Velis Prime," Suji commanded. "Maximum speed. We have people to save and enemies to stop." The Shadow Armada turned as one massive entity, their reactors burning bright against the dark. Then, in a flash of light and distorted space, they jumped into slipstream and disappeared. Behind them, automated beacons activated, sending messages back toward Earth and forward to the Galactic Council. The messages were simple. Humanity is coming. In his quarters on the Council Station, Hyon received confirmation that the fleet was mobilized. He sat down heavily, relief and worry warring in his chest. He had unleashed humanity's military might. The galaxy would never be the same. And on Velis Prime and shelters deep underground, The Velans huddled in darkness and prayed that someone, anyone, would answer their desperate call. In the void between stars, death was coming for the Crothians, but it wore a human face. The Shadow Armada moved through space like a storm of metal and fire. 847 ships traveled in perfect formation, their engines burning trails of blue light across the darkness. Inside each vessel, crews worked with focused intensity, preparing for a battle that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Suji Choi stood on the bridge of Ghost of Titan, watching the tactical display with sharp eyes. The holographic map showed their route to Velis Prime, a journey that should take 6 days at standard fleet speed. But they did not have 6 days. The Velans were dying now. Lieutenant Dan, Suji called to the young navigator who had transferred to her flagship for this mission. "Tell me about this shortcut you proposed." Dan stepped forward, her fingers bringing up a new route on the display. The line cut directly through a region marked in red, the Ashara Nebula. Warning symbols flashed along the path. "The Ashara Nebula is classified as impassable," Dan explained. "Radiation levels are extreme. Gravitational anomalies occur every few thousand kilometers. The gas clouds interfere with sensors. Most species cannot survive the radiation, even with shielding." "But we can," Suji said. It was not a question. "We can," Dan confirmed. "Our ships are built to withstand harsh conditions. Our crews can handle higher radiation doses than any other known species. And I have calculated a path through the gravitational wells that will actually speed us up if we use them correctly." Suji studied the younger woman. Dan was only 26, brilliant but untested in real combat situations. This route could save thousands of Velan lives. It could also kill everyone in the fleet. "How certain are you?" Suji asked. Dan met her eyes without hesitation. 93% certain we will make it through. 7% chance of losing ships to unforeseen anomalies. But Admiral, if we take the standard route, the Velans will be dead before we arrive. 100% certain. Suji made her decision in seconds. "Send a course to all ships. We go through the nebula. All crews to radiation protocols." Across the fleet, alarms sounded. Crews sealed themselves into reinforced sections of their ships. Radiation medication was distributed. Equipment was secured. The human fleet prepared to do something no other species in the galaxy would attempt. Captain Minho Park read the new orders on Eternal Horizon with a mix of excitement and fear. The Ashara Nebula. Every captain in the fleet knew the stories. 3 exploration vessels from other species had entered it over the years. None had returned. "Crew, this is the captain," Minho announced over ship-wide communications. "We are entering the Ashara Nebula. Radiation will be severe. Gravitational forces will test our hull integrity. But we are human. Our ancestors survived radiation from a damaged sun. They survived gravity that crushed their bones and built them stronger. We carry that strength in our blood. We will make it through." His crew responded with determination. They trusted their captain. They trusted their ship. Most of all, they trusted in the stubborn human refusal to accept the impossible. The fleet entered the nebula as one massive formation. Immediately, the radiation counters spiked. Warning lights flashed on every bridge. Outside the viewports, the nebula swirled in colors that hurt to look at, sick greens and violent purples. Clouds of gas that glowed with deadly energy. Dr. Bora Shin monitored her patients in the medical bay of Mercy's Grace. Already, some crew members were showing early signs of radiation exposure: nausea, fatigue, skin irritation. She moved between beds, administering treatments and offering encouragement. "How bad is it?" asked a young engineer, his face pale. Bora checked his readings and smiled. You are getting about the same radiation as a bad day in old Tokyo before the atmospheric shields. Unpleasant, but not deadly. You will be fine." The engineer laughed weakly. Only humans would compare a death nebula to a city. Only humans would fly through a death nebula to save strangers, Laura corrected gently. On Ghost of Titan's bridge, Lieutenant Dan called out course corrections every few minutes. The gravitational anomalies were even worse than predicted. Massive wells of twisted space appeared without warning, capable of crushing a ship into the size of a marble. "Gravitational spike bearing 273, Dan announced. "All ships, adjust vector by 15 degrees starboard. Execute in 3, 2, 1, now." The fleet turned as one entity, 847 ships moving in perfect synchronization. They skimmed past the gravitational well so closely that several smaller corvettes groaned with stress. But they made it through dot, then another anomaly appeared. And another. Dan worked without stopping, her brain processing sensor data faster than the computers could display it. She saw patterns in the chaos, pathways through the deadly maze. Admiral Tsuji watched the young navigator with growing respect. Dan was not just following calculations. She was feeling the nebula, understanding it on an instinctive level. It was a gift that could not be taught. Hours passed. The radiation continued to climb. Several ships reported minor hull breaches, quickly sealed. 3 crew members across the fleet developed severe radiation sickness and were put in medical cryosleep. But the Armada pushed forward, refusing to slow down. In the engineering section of Eternal Horizon, Sergeant Taiyang Kang and his Marine squad performed emergency repairs on a damaged radiation shield. Taiyang was a big man, heavily muscled even by human standards, with scars from a dozen boarding actions. "Move faster," he growled at his team. "If this shield fails, the whole port side gets cooked." His Marines worked with desperate speed, welding new plates into place while radiation alarms screamed around them. They wore heavy protective gear, but even that had limits. Taiyang knew they were absorbing dangerous levels of exposure. He did not care. The mission came first. "Shield is holding," one Marine reported finally. "Good," Taiyang said. "Now, let's get to medical and get pumped full of anti-radiation drugs before our hair falls out." His squad laughed despite the danger. That was the human way. Laugh at death. Spit in its face. Keep moving forward. On the second day in the nebula, the Galactic Council learned of humanity's mobilization. Counselor Vex received the report with disbelief. They launched their entire secret fleet? He demanded. "How large is this fleet?" "Intelligence estimates 800 ships, possibly more," an aide reported. "They are moving at speeds that should be impossible while maintaining formation through hostile space." Vex felt cold fear creep through his crystalline body. Humanity had hidden an armada of that size for decades. What else were they hiding? An emergency session was called. The council chamber filled with panicked representatives. Ambassador Hyan stood calmly in his section, waiting for the accusations. "You have launched a military fleet without council authorization," Counselor Vex shouted. "This is an act of aggression." "This is an act of rescue," Hyan replied coldly. "The Velans called for help. You refused to answer." "We did not." "You are Deathworlders," another counselor hissed. "You cannot be trusted with military power. Who knows what you will do once you have tasted battle?" Hyan stepped forward, his human eyes hard. "You want to know what we will do? We will save the Velans. We will stop the Crothians. And then we will return to our borders and wait for the next time you need monsters to solve your problems." The chamber erupted in angry voices. But underneath the anger, Hyan heard something else. Fear. The galaxy was afraid of what humanity might become. Good. Fear kept people honest back in the nebula. The Shadow Armada emerged on the third day. The transition from deadly radiation to normal space was sudden. One moment, alarms screamed and sensors showed chaos. The next, stars shone clear and beautiful ahead. Admiral Tsuji checked the fleet status. 17 ships had suffered moderate damage. 83 crew members needed medical treatment. 2 ships had lost main power and were being towed. But they had made it through. More importantly, they had cut 3 days off their travel time. "Lieutenant Dan," Tsuji said formally, "your navigation was exceptional. I am recommending you for commendation." Dan bowed her head, exhausted but proud. "Thank you, Admiral. I just did what needed to be done." "That is what makes you human," Tsuji replied with a rare smile. The fleet reformed its battle formation and jumped to full speed. Ahead, Velis Prime's star system glowed on the sensors. And surrounding it, like a swarm of metal insects, was the Crothian Armada. Captain Minho received the tactical data and felt his stomach tighten. 300 Crothian capital ships. Thousands of smaller craft. Orbital weapons platforms. The enemy outnumbered them significantly. But humans had never won through numbers. They won through determination, tactics, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. "All ships," Admiral Tsuji announced to the fleet. "We arrive at Velis Prime in 18 hours. The Crothians have been bombarding the planet for 6 days. They think they are safe. They think no one will challenge them. Let us teach them about human hospitality." The Shadow Armada burned through space toward battle. In the medical bays, Dr. Bora prepared for mass casualties. In the Marine quarters, Sergeant Taiyang checked his weapons and armor. On every bridge, captains reviewed attack plans and made peace with the possibility of death. And on Ghost of Titan, Admiral Tsuji looked at a photograph she kept hidden in her desk. Her husband, her children, all dead because the galaxy had looked away when raiders attacked human colonies. She had not been able to save them. But she would save Crothian Admiral Dex watched Velis Prime burn from the bridge of his flagship, Doom of Worlds. 6 days of bombardment had reduced the planet's major cities to rubble. The Velans huddled in underground shelters, helpless and hopeless. It was glorious. Dex was a massive creature, his armored body standing 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin like black metal. The Crothians were conquerors, a species that believed strength was the only law that mattered. They had crushed 17 star systems. Velis Prime would be number 18. "Status report," Dex commanded in his rumbling voice. "The planetary shields are at 12%, his tactical officer reported. 1 more day of bombardment, and we can land ground forces to finish the survivors." "Excellent. This world will make a fine refueling station for our expansion into..." Alarms screamed across the bridge. Red lights flashed. Officers scrambled to their stations in confusion. "What is happening?" Dex roared. "Incoming projectiles. Extremely high velocity. They just appeared on sensors." On the tactical display, dozens of red dots streaked toward the Crothian fleet at impossible speeds. Dex had only seconds to process what he was seeing before the first impacts hit. 12 Crothian warships exploded in rapid succession. Not from energy weapons or missiles, but from simple rocks accelerated to 30% of light speed. The kinetic energy was devastating. Ships that had survived countless battles were torn apart like paper. Where did those come from? Dex demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. Sensors are detecting, wait, new contacts. Multiple ships dropping out of slipstream at the system's edge. Counting 200. 400. 700. How many?" Dex's voice was deadly quiet. 847 ships, Admiral. They are human." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Dex felt fear. Admiral Suji Choi watched the Crothian formation break apart on her tactical display with cold satisfaction. The asteroid bombardment had worked perfectly. Now came the hard part. All ships, this is Admiral Choi. Execute battle plan Hammer and Anvil. Alpha Group, you are the hammer. Make them think you are the main attack. Beta Group, you are the anvil. Swing wide and hit their flanks. Gamma Group, stealth approach. Target their command ships. Across the Shadow Armada, 800 ships split into 3 formations. Alpha Group, led by Captain Minho Park's Eternal Horizon, charged straight toward the Crothian center. 280 dreadnoughts and heavy cruisers, their weapons charging, their armor thick. The Crothians scrambled to respond. Their ships turned to face the human attack, concentrating their firepower. Dex smiled with sharp teeth. These Deathworlders were brave but foolish. They attacked in a straight line, easy to target. All weapons, open fire. Dex commanded. Show them the price of challenging the swarm. The Crothian fleet unleashed a storm of energy weapons and missiles. Space lit up with explosions. The first human ships entered the kill zone and were hit by devastating fire. But they did not stop. Captain Minho felt Eternal Horizon shudder as energy blasts hammered the shields. Damage reports flooded in. The port shield was down to 40%. The starboard armor had breaches. But they had expected this. Return fire, Minho ordered calmly. All railguns, maximum rate of fire. Target their forward line. The human railguns were different from standard galactic weapons. They did not use energy or exotic particles. They simply accelerated metal slugs to extreme velocities using magnetic force. The technology was ancient by galactic standards, but the humans had perfected it. Eternal Horizon's main guns fired, and the recoil shook the massive ship. Tungsten slugs, each weighing several tons, crossed the distance in seconds. They punched through Crothian shields like they did not exist and tore through armor plating designed to withstand energy weapons. 3 Crothian ships exploded. 4 more went dark, their reactors destroyed. They are using projectile weapons. A Crothian officer reported in shock. So what? Dax snapped. Primitive technology. Focus fire on their leading ships and destroy them. But the Crothians did not understand human military doctrine. Every human ship was designed to take damage and keep fighting. Their crews trained in conditions that would kill other species. And they had one advantage no other race possessed. They refused to die quietly. Eternal Horizon took hit after hit. The shields collapsed. Armor melted. Fires broke out on multiple decks. The medical bay filled with wounded. But Minho kept his ship in the fight, trading blow for blow with ships twice its size. While the Crothians focused on Alpha Group, Beta Group swung wide around the battle. 300 ships led by Admiral Suji herself moved in a long arc, using the planet's gravity to accelerate. They had been ignored in the chaos. That was a mistake. All ships, execute flanking attack now, Suji commanded. Beta Group hit the Crothian fleet from the side, catching them completely unprepared. Human weapons tore through ships that had turned to face the other direction. It was slaughter. Admiral Dex realized too late that the frontal assault had been a distraction. Reform the line. Protect our flanks. But the Crothian ships were massive and slow to turn. The humans were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. They darted between the Crothian vessels like sharks, firing constantly, never staying still long enough to be targeted effectively. Deep in the chaos, Gamma Group approached unseen. These were humanity's stealth ships, smaller corvettes and frigates with advanced cloaking technology. Sergeant Taiyang Kang stood in the boarding pod of his assault ship, checking his weapons one last time. 2 minutes to boarding range, the pilot announced. Taiyang looked at his squad of 20 Marines. They wore heavy armor, carried weapons that could punch through ship hulls, and had trained for years in zero-gravity combat. They were the best humanity had to offer. "Remember the drill," Taiyang said. "Fast and brutal. We hit their command ships, take out the bridges, and get out. Anyone who gets left behind is on their own." His Marines nodded. They had all volunteered for this. They knew the risks. The stealth ships close to within meters of the Crothian vessels, still invisible to sensors. Then, all at once, they activated their magnetic locks and attached to the hulls like metal parasites. "Breach in 3, 2, 1, execute." Shaped charges blew holes in the Crothian armor. Human Marines poured through into the enemy ships, their weapons firing before the Crothians even understood what was happening. Taiyang led his squad through narrow corridors, killing everything that moved. The Crothians were bigger and stronger individually, but they had never fought humans in close quarters. They did not understand how fast humans could move, how aggressively they fought, how they never stopped even when wounded. A Crothian warrior charged Taiyang, all four arms swinging massive blades. Taiyang ducked under the first swing, shot the creature in the leg, then crushed its skull with the butt of his rifle as it fell. 3 seconds, one enemy down. He kept moving. His squad reached the bridge and blew the door off its hinges. The Crothian officers inside tried to fight, but they were not warriors. Marines cut them down with precise fire. "Bridge secured," Taiyang reported. "Setting charges. 30 seconds to detonation." His squad planted explosives throughout the command center and retreated at a run. They made it back to their boarding pod with 5 seconds to spare. The ship shuddered as the charges detonated, destroying the bridge and killing everyone who tried to retake it. Across the battlefield, 20 Crothian command ships suffered the same fate. Their bridges destroyed, their officers dead. The vessels went dark and drifted uselessly. Admiral Dex watched his fleet fall apart around him. The humans were everywhere, fighting with a ferocity he had never witnessed. His ships were stronger, but the humans did not care. They took damage that should destroy them and kept fighting. They boarded enemy vessels like ancient pirates. They used tactics the Crothians had never encountered. All ships retreat to defensive formation. Dex ordered, but it was too late. The human fleet had them surrounded, and Admiral Suji was not interested in allowing them to regroup. "All ships full assault," she commanded. "Break their formation. Show them what Deathworlders do to bullies." The Shadow Armada surged forward as one massive wave of metal and fury. The Crothians tried to hold, but human determination was an unstoppable force. Then Admiral Dex made his final, desperate decision. Target the planet. Full bombardment. If we cannot win, they cannot either. His remaining ships turned their weapons toward Velis Prime's surface. The Velans, watching from their shelters, saw death approaching and screamed in despair. Lieutenant Dayan saw the Crothian ships, repositioning, and understood immediately what they intended. "Admiral, they are targeting the planet." Suji's face went cold and hard. "Calculate an intercept course for Doom of Worlds. Emergency speed." "Admiral, at that speed and angle, we would have to—" "I know what it means," Suji interrupted. "Do it." Dayan's fingers flew across her controls, her heart breaking. She knew what the Admiral was planning. Course calculated. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel to escape pods," Suji ordered her crew calmly. "You have 2 minutes. Anyone who wants to stay, you may. But this ship is about to ram the enemy flagship." Most of the crew evacuated, but 50 volunteered to stay, to keep the ship running and tie. Dr. Borishin had not slept in 48 hours. Her hands were steady despite exhaustion as she worked on her current patient, a young Velan child with severe burns from the bombardment. The medical tent around her was filled with wounded, both human and Velen, and the sound of quiet suffering. The Velen child whimpered as Bora applied treatment to the burns. The species was small and fragile, with pale green skin and large eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. "She, little one," Bora said softly in the common tongue. "The pain will stop soon. You are safe now. Are you human?" The child asked weakly. "I am. They said humans were monsters. But you are helping me." Bora felt her throat tighten. "Monsters hurt the innocent. We protect them. That is the difference." The child's wounds were extensive, but Bora had treated worse. Humans had developed advanced trauma medicine from centuries of surviving their death world. Techniques designed to save people from predator attacks, radiation exposure, and environmental disasters worked remarkably, while on other species. She finished the treatment and moved to the next patient. Around her, other human medical teams worked with the same dedication. They had come to fight, but now they were healing. Both were part of the same mission. Outside the medical tents, the surface of Velis Prime was a landscape of destruction. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. Orbital bombardment had left massive craters. Millions of Velens were dead, and millions more were homeless. But humans were good at disaster relief. They had experience with their own planet, trying to kill them regularly. Captain Minho walked through a refugee camp, his uniform still scorched from battle. He was not needed here, but he wanted to see the people they had saved. It made the cost feel more bearable. A group of Velen elders approached him, led by a female named Nima. She was old, her skin darker green with age, but her eyes were sharp and grateful. "Captain Park," Nima said, bowing in the Velen way. "You and your people have given us back our lives. We can never repay this debt." Minho bowed back. "We did not come for payment. We came because it was right. The Galactic Council abandoned us," Nima said bitterly. "They debated and delayed while we died. But humanity, who owes us nothing, crossed dangerous space to save us. We will not forget this." Back in orbit, the Shadow Armada tended its wounds. Damaged ships were being repaired. The dead were being prepared for burial. And Captain Gina Song, an intelligence officer from the carrier Horizon's Edge, was investigating something that did not make sense. Gina sat in a small office aboard her ship, reviewing communications data from the Galactic Council. She was 34, with sharp features and sharper instincts. Something about the Council's response to the Velen crisis had bothered her from the start. Why did they delay so long? She muttered to herself, scrolling through encrypted transmissions. The answer should have been simple: cowardice and bureaucracy. But Gina had learned to trust her instincts, and her instincts said there was more to this story. She ran decryption programs on Council communications from the weeks before the attack. Most were routine, but then she found something interesting: a series of back-channel messages between Counselor Vex and an unknown party. The encryption was military-grade, but human computers were very good at breaking codes. Gina waited patiently while her programs worked. 3 hours later, she had the decoded messages. What she read made her blood run cold. Gina immediately requested a priority communication with Ambassador Hyam Lee. When his face appeared on her screen, she did not waste time. "Ambassador, I have discovered evidence of a conspiracy within the Galactic Council. Several counselors have been in secret communication with the Crothian swarm." Hyan's expression darkened. "Explain." The Crothians offered non-aggression pacts to certain council species. In exchange, those species would not interfere with Crothian expansion into specific regions. Velis Prime was designated an acceptable loss. The Council delayed their response deliberately, giving the Crothians time to conquer the planet. Do you have proof? Encrypted communications, financial transactions, and coordination of military movements. I have enough to expose at least 5 counselors, including Vex." Hyan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Captain Song, prepare a complete report. I am calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. It is time for some truth." 3 days later, the council chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives, drawn by rumors of a major announcement. Ambassador Hyan stood in the center of the chamber, a holographic display floating beside him. Counselor Vex looked nervous. He had heard the rumors too. "I call this session to address the handling of the Velen crisis." Hyan began formally. "Specifically, I wish to question why the Council delayed responding to their distress call." "We have addressed this already," Vex interrupted. "It was a matter of military capability, and it was a matter of conspiracy and betrayal." Hyan cut him off coldly. "Captain Gina Song of Earth, intelligence has uncovered communications between several counselors and the Crothian swarm. These communications revealed that certain council members had secret agreements with our enemy." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Hyan activated the holographic display, showing the decoded messages for everyone to see. "Counselor Vex, you received 2 million galactic credits from a Crothian front company 3 months ago. In exchange, you agreed to delay council responses to Crothian aggression in the Velen sector. Counselor Dreth of the Talaran Collective accepted similar terms, as did 3 others whose names are in this report." Vex stood, his crystalline body shaking with anger or fear. "These accusations are baseless. You have no right to." "I have every right," Hyan said quietly, his voice carrying despite its softness. "My people died fighting a war that should never have happened because your greed made it inevitable. Millions of Velens died because you sold them to monsters. You have no moral authority here. You have no honor. You have nothing but guilt." Security forces moved to detain the accused counselors. Some tried to flee. All were caught. The chamber descended into chaos as species began arguing, accusing each other, and demanding answers. Through it all, Ambassador Hyan stood calm and unmoved. He had learned long ago that the galaxy was not kind. But he had also learned that truth was a powerful weapon. After the session, Counselor Rechin of the Vaxian species approached Hyan privately. Archon was a thoughtful being, known for fairness and wisdom. "Ambassador Hyan," Arachin said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I voted against helping the Velens because I feared the cost. I was wrong." "You were afraid," Hyan replied. "Fear is natural, but we must not let it make us cruel." "Your people frightened us," Arachin admitted. "Still do, honestly. You come from a world that would kill most of us in days. You have strength we cannot match. But today, I realize something. The real monsters are not the ones born on Deathworlds. The real monsters are those who watch others die and do nothing." Hyan nodded slowly. Perhaps the galaxy needed Deathworlders. Someone had to care enough to fight. Back on Velis Prime, the recovery continued. Human engineering teams helped rebuild infrastructure. Human farmers shared techniques for growing food in damaged soil. Human counselors helped traumatized Velens process their grief. Elder Nima stood with Minho on a hillside overlooking what had been her city. Construction machines were clearing rubble, preparing to rebuild. "We would like to propose a formal alliance with humanity," Nima said. "The Velens have lived in peace for centuries, trusting the Council to protect us. That trust is broken. But we trust you." Minho was surprised. "An alliance? We are not diplomats, Elder Nima. We are soldiers. You are more than that. You are people who answer calls for help. That is rarer than you know." Nima turned to face him directly. "We offer you friendship, trade, and mutual defense. If humanity is ever threatened, the Velens will stand with you. even though we are Deathworlders? Minho asked quietly. Because you are Deathworlders, Nima corrected. You understand that survival requires strength, that peace requires the will to defend it. The galaxy has grown soft and selfish. But not you, Minho accepted with a bow. It was the first formal alliance humanity had made with any alien species. It would not be the last. Weeks after the battle, a memorial was constructed on Velis Prime. It listed the names of every human who died, saving their world. 31,847 names carved into black stone. Commander Jiwon Kim stood before it, her hand resting on the cool surface. She had survived the battle, taking command of the fleet after Admiral Suji's sacrifice. The weight of leadership sat heavy on her shoulders. You proved we're not monsters, she whispered to the memorial. You proved we are heroes. I will make sure the galaxy never forgets. Behind her, the reconstruction continued. Velans and humans worked side by side, building something new from the ruins. The galaxy was changing, whether it was ready or not. And in the darkness of space, a coded message traveled toward Earth. It was from the Crothian swarm, addressed to humanity's government. The message was brief. We underestimated you. This will not happen again. It was both acknowledgement and threat. The Crothians had learned to fear Deathworlders, but they had not learned to stop being conquerors. The war was not over. It had only just begun. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velis Prime, and the galaxy was a different place. The memorial on the Velan homeworld had become a pilgrimage site, visited by beings from dozens of species who wanted to honor the Deathworlders who had answered the call. But more importantly, it had become a symbol of what was possible when courage replaced fear. President Soman Yu stood in her office on Earth, looking at a holographic display showing the current state of galactic politics. Soman was 60 years old, a former admiral who had commanded border defense fleets before entering politics. She had been elected on a platform of strength through solidarity, and now she was making that vision real. 12 species have formally requested defensive pacts, her aide reported. Another 8 are in preliminary negotiations. The Galactic Council is calling it the Deathworlder Accords. Someone smiled slightly. They mean it as an insult. We will take it as a compliment. Schedule meetings with each species. I want to understand their needs and their capabilities. The Deathworlder Accords were humanity's answer to the Council's betrayal. Any species that wanted Earth's protection would receive it in exchange for mutual defense commitments and open trade. It was a simple arrangement, but it was revolutionary. For the first time, smaller species did not have to rely on the corrupt Council for protection. On the military training station above Mars, something equally revolutionary was happening. Human instructors were teaching mixed-species crews how to fight together. Captain Minho Park, promoted to admiral after his actions at Velis Prime, watched a training exercise from the observation deck. Below, a crew of humans, Velans, Vaxians, and 3 other species worked to repel a simulated boarding action. The Velan crew members were struggling. They were not built for combat, their bodies too fragile for the heavy armor and weapons. But they were learning to use their small size and agility to their advantage, moving through spaces the larger species could not reach. They are getting better, commented Ambassador Kira, the young Velan diplomat assigned to Earth. She stood beside Minho, watching her people train alongside humans. They have courage, Minho agreed. Skill can be taught. Courage cannot. Will it be enough? Kira asked quietly. When the Crothians come again, it will have to be. The exercise ended with the mixed crew successfully repelling the boarding party. They celebrated together, human and alien voices mixing in shared victory. It was a small thing, but it represented a massive shift in galactic culture. Lieutenant Dan Wang had become something of a celebrity. Her navigation techniques through the Ashara Nebula had been published in academic journals across the galaxy. And now she traveled from world to world, teaching other navigators her methods. On the Vaxian homeworld, she stood before an audience of 200 navigators from 30 different species. Most were older than her, more experienced, but they listened with rapt attention. The key is to stop thinking of space as empty, Dayan explained. Holographic displays showing complex gravitational patterns. Space is full of forces, currents, and flows. If you can feel them, you can use them. What seems impassable becomes navigable. A Vaxian navigator raised a tentacle, but the calculations required are enormous. How do you process them quickly enough? Dane smiled. I do not calculate everything. I feel the patterns. It is like surfing a wave. You do not calculate the wave's motion. You sense it and respond. That is not scientific, another navigator protested. No, Dayan agreed. It is human. We evolved to navigate dangerous environments by instinct. I have simply adapted that instinct to space. Her methods were spreading across the galaxy, opening new trade routes and making previously dangerous regions accessible. Human innovation was changing the fundamental nature of space travel. Back on Earth, Dr. Borishin had established the first interspecies medical research center. Scientists and doctors from across the galaxy worked together, sharing knowledge and techniques. The challenge, Bora explained to her team, is that each species has unique biology. What heals a human might poison a villain. But there are universal principles we can identify. Her research had already saved thousands of lives. Trauma techniques developed on Earth worked surprisingly well on species with similar cardiovascular systems. Radiation treatments designed for humans proved effective for 3 other species. The sharing of medical knowledge was creating a new foundation for cooperation. But not everyone welcomed the changes. In the Galactic Council chambers, tensions ran high. Humanity is becoming too powerful, argued a counselor from the Drethian Collective. They control the strongest military fleet. Their technology is spreading everywhere. Their influence grows daily. We created the Council to prevent any single species from dominating. Ambassador Hyam Lee listened calmly to the complaints. He had heard them many times over the past months. The Council failed, he said simply when his turn came to speak. You failed the Velans. You failed to stop the Crothians. You failed to protect the weak. Humanity did not seek power. We accepted responsibility you refused to take. You are Deathworlders, the Drethian counselor spat. You cannot be trusted with. We can be trusted because we have proven it, Hyan interrupted. Every species in the Deathworlder Accords joined voluntarily. We have asked nothing except mutual defense and honest trade. Compare that to your corruption and secret deals with the Crothians. Counselor Archin stood, and the chamber quieted. Archin had become humanity's strongest advocate on the Council. I propose we restructure the Council, Archin announced. We need mandatory military readiness requirements. We need mutual defense clauses with real teeth. We need to ensure that what happened to Velis Prime never happens again. The debate raged for hours, but eventually, the proposal passed. The Galactic Council would have to change or become irrelevant. Most species chose to change dot in the border regions of space. The new reality was being tested. A Crothian raiding fleet attacked a mining colony on the edge of neutral territory. It was a small operation, probably meant to test the new alliances. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human warships arrived first, emerging from slipstream with weapons hot. But they were not alone. Velen support cruisers provided electronic warfare support. Vaxian stealth ships fed targeting data. Ships from 4 other species contributed what they could. The Crothian raiders took one look at the assembled fleet and retreated without firing a shot. The colony was saved without a single casualty. Across the galaxy, the message was clear: attack one member of the Deathworlder Accords, and you face them all. Commander Ji-won Kim had rebuilt the Shadow Armada, replacing lost ships and integrating allied vessels. She stood on the bridge of her new flagship, Unbroken Will, looking at the diverse crew around her. Her tactical officer was Velen. Her chief engineer was human. Her communication officer was Vaxian. They worked together with practiced efficiency, united by shared purpose. "Commander," her communication officer reported, "we are receiving a distress signal from the Galactic Rim. Unknown species. They are under attack by raiders." Ji-won studied the coordinates. It would take 3 days to reach them at maximum speed. 3 days in which unknown beings would suffer and die. "All ships," she broadcast to her fleet, which now included vessels from 7 different species. "We have received a distress call. Someone needs our help. Prepare for immediate departure." There was no hesitation, no debate. The crews moved to their stations with shared determination. From the communication station, Ambassador Kira smiled. She had been assigned to Ji-won's flagship as a diplomatic liaison, and she had learned much about humans in that time. "You did not even ask what species sent the signal," Kira observed. "Does it matter?" Ji-won replied. "Someone needs help. We answer the call." It was the same thing Admiral Suji had said 6 months ago. It had become humanity's creed, spreading to their allies and changing the galaxy's understanding of responsibility. On Velis Prime, Elder Nima walked through the rebuilt city with President Somin Yu. The destruction had been immense, but the reconstruction was nearly complete. New buildings rose where rubble had been. Parks bloomed where craters had scarred the land. "Your people have given us more than survival," Nima said. "You have given us hope. You have shown us that strength and compassion are not opposites." "We learned that from necessity," Soman replied. "Earth taught us to be strong. Our humanity taught us to be compassionate. Both are necessary. The galaxy is changing because of you. Species that hated each other are working together. The weak are finding protection. The strong are learning responsibility. All because Deathworlders answered a call for help." Soman looked at the memorial in the city's center, the black stone bearing 31,000 names. They paid a high price for that change. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. We will make sure of it. In the depths of space, monitoring stations detected new Crothian fleet movements. The enemy was regrouping, planning, preparing for the next confrontation. The Crothians had learned to respect human military power, but they had not learned to abandon their conquests. The reports reached Earth, the Council, and every member of the Deathworlder Accords. But this time, there was no panic, no debate about whether to act. The response was already being prepared. Admiral Minho Park reviewed the defensive plans with his mixed species,